Suzanne's Paparazzi Jewelry, 24/7 shopping available. 160920 is the code. Show her some love, like she showed us.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network. I am Ace, and tonight you're watching another episode of Tuesday Night Mania. And tonight I'm joined by none other than, well, he's here, back again, Mr. Mess Around Dave. How you doing tonight?
I am great. Just ready to talk some wrestling with you guys. I look forward to a great show.
All right, and then, of course, he's still here, Mr. Will from TRC. How are you doing tonight?
Doing great. Ready to go. Ready to talk about some wrestling.
Absolutely. So the first thing we have, look, I'm just going to cut to the chase here. I know that there's quite a bit to talk about on this aspect. That's why I kind of saved some room for it. On the AEW side, look, Will, you saw me put it in the chat earlier. I'm giving you credit for this because you called this at the very beginning. When all this started, you said, look, this direction is going the direction of the WCW days. And look what's happening. Like, all hell's breaking loose and people are like, is this a work? And I'm telling you, I don't think this is a work. To be perfectly honest, I don't think it is. I think this is a shoot. I think there's a lot of stuff that's going on backstage. And now we're seeing that Punk is a problem. CM Punk is a problem. So, Will, if you kind of want to throw kind of your feedback in there of kind of how you thought this was turning into the WCW days.
So, great point, great opener. We talked about this a lot back in 2011 or 2013. You guys can correct me on the date. But, Triple H made that promo where he said, CM Punk is all about change as long as CM Punk's on top of the world while it's changing, basically. And, the guy is all about CM Punk, which, that's today's society. Everybody, it's a me society anyway. But this guy for years has only been about CM Punk. So, in 2014, he ends up leaving WWE because he's afraid part-timers are going to get main event spots at WrestleMania, when it was another guy who worked just as hard in the independents as he did that ends up, main eventing WrestleMania, winning WrestleMania. They nicknamed it Yeselmania because it's Daniel Bryan's WrestleMania victory and all that stuff. So the guy has no real basis for what he's saying. And, on top of that, too, you talk about a guy who just isn't pleasant, doesn't care about the fans. He made the comment a while back, too, and I'll bring it up again, where, he said he didn't want to sell his ring gear because he didn't want somebody walking around in his stuff, like basically walking around in his underwear. That's not what ring gear is all about. That's not what collectibles are all about. That just gives you a real look in the inside or inside the thought process of this guy. And he's made all this money, and all of a sudden you're seeing he had problems before. He was a quitter. He walked out and quit. Now he's a quitter again. He's out there causing issues backstage. I get it, but enough's enough. And here's the thing. If this doesn't work out for him, there's not going to be a WWE run like 6 months from now, because nobody's going to want this guy in their company. He's not going to go to Impact. He's not going to go anywhere else. This has to work out for him, or he's going to be done. This guy's going to end up going broke and end up having to work a regular job, a 9 to 5, because nobody's going to hire him. And he can't go to UFC because we all saw how that worked out. So the guy's been a problem since day one. The guy's always been a problem. He's always going to be an issue. If it's not Punk's way, it's the highway. And fortunately, I think, eventually we're going to see him hit the highway, and you'll never see him again because nobody will hire him.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem is like when you think about back then, for some reason, I don't know why, but when all this stuff went on with CM Punk back then, when he left WWE, everybody looked at WWE and said, this is their fault. This is their fault that Punk up and left. And now I think this is kind of opening some eyes and being like, was it really their fault that Punk up and left now? It was simply because he wanted everything. He wanted to main event everything. He thought he deserved everything. And I think if Punk had his way, he would have lost the title in WWE. He would have held it. He would have held it for forever. And I think that was kind of like a big problem. And I know, Mess Around, we kind of talked about this a little bit before you came on. Back in the WWE days, CM Punk was your boy. Okay, you were a huge fan of CM Punk, but now even you yourself, that you being a fan of Punk, you're starting to say he's kind of rubbing you the wrong way also.
Yeah, big time. Like just the things that he said during that media master thing or whatever they're calling it. It just things he said about Hangman, things he said about Cabana and all that, and he just went off on this big old tirade. And he was my guy for the longest time. I always thought he was the best in the world. I loved his clobbering time, the whole nine. And then when he took his ball and went home, that's when I lost respect for Punk. I mean, I didn't think it was the E's fault back then. I thought it was a Punk thing, and he was out for himself back then. And even when he first came back, yeah, it was great. They got the ratings when he first came back. He got the loud pops, a loud ovation, whatever. And then the nostalgia kind of wore off. People saw through him. They saw, he's not as great as we thought he was. He's an a-hole.
Well,
we're starting to see that.
Yeah, and if you remember, I don't know if you heard this whole conversation before when we were talking about this, but Will even came out when CM Punk, first came back for several months, and Will's like, dude, this guy has been the biggest financial flop that there was in the business, man.
Absolutely. You know how much it cost them to bring him back, and for what? What has he done?
Not really much of there. He hasn't done anything really.
I mean, he tried going the UFC route, but all he did was prove that he can't fight for nothing. He was a name. That's all they brought him in for. He was a name, and he couldn't fight. He got beat up.
Well, and how do you have him lose in 3 minutes to Moxley on a Wednesday night, and then go into the pay-per-view against Moxley? What sense does that make?
Right? Not at all. I don't understand that either.
No sense.
Wow, he loses in 3 minutes, and he all of a sudden can beat him.
Punk's not the only problem in AEW, though. I mean, Punk's his own world of problems. But, there's leadership problems, apparently. There's management problems there, apparently. I mean, there's a lot of issues. They have way too much talent to run that building successfully. You need to get rid of some of the older talent and get those people out of there, because in WCW, what happened? They brought everybody in. They gave everybody guaranteed contracts. Everybody was a star. Everybody was a world champion. Everybody was this. Everybody was that. But at the end of the day, you only have one world champion. And in WCW, in 1996, 1997, who was going to be your world champion? Hogan, Savage, Flair. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Piper, Bret Hart, Sting. Who was going to be the world champion? Because there were so many people. Kevin Nash, Goldberg, Scott Hall. There's so many people there. There's only room for one at the very, very top. Then you have the ones that you work with at the very, very top. But you only have one champion.
Yeah, so which makes sense.
Same issue. Same exact issue. The roster is this thick. And the problem is the room for television time is about this thick. So that's what happened.
And Roger Cooper is coming on now saying merchandise sales at first is what it was for CM Punk. And that's honestly what it was. When they brought him on, they're like, oh, he'll sell some merchandise. Okay, yeah, great, he did. But did he really bring the viewerships that they wanted? Not really. I mean, they hit 1 million views the first time he was there. But then after that, they didn't hit it since.
Are you guys? First of all, let me say shout out to Roger Cooper. What's up, Roger Cooper? One of my guys from TRC, great guy. See Michael Bray, one of my admins, popped in there too. Hello to everybody in the chat room. We're going to get to some comments here in a second. But do you guys realize that even the ice cream wrapper, just the wrapper from the ice cream that came out with CM Punk, people were paying $75 just for the wrapper?
That's crazy.
That's a true story. I mean, you literally can go back to eBay and look and stuff. They were paying $75 for just the wrapper. Somebody else had already taken the ice cream out, ate the ice cream, thrown the stick away, saved the wrapper, cleaned it out. I assume maybe they didn't even clean it out. Maybe it's still chocolate. I don't know. But $75 for a wrapper. That's how much people were so excited about him coming back. And then what happened? He let everybody down. That's what happened.
Yep. And the con man is saying, hello, fellas. The con man is in the building. Nice show. I'm sharing this. Thank you very much, con man. We definitely appreciate it. Welcome in.
Thank you.
But yeah, so like when you look at this, I think the biggest problem is his ego got in the way. That's what it was.
Always.
And I think that that's going to always be an issue. Now, did TK bring on some of this himself? Absolutely. You know, I look at this and say some of this is TK's fault.
Right.
Just for allowing this to happen, allowing him to run amok like this in the backstage area and kind of do whatever he wants.
Right.
That's kind of the way I see it. Now, a lot of people at this point in time are like, okay, well, you know how some people get called like WWE marks or whatever, and people are saying, okay, you're like a mark, and they're sitting there saying these WWE marks want AEW to fail. No, that's not what it is at all. That's not what we're trying to say. We're trying to say, if you want to run a company, though, you can't have somebody like CM Punk doing whatever he wants and calling everybody out. That's the problem.
I agree. Absolutely agree. So, but here's the thing. Why is it if you're a WWE fan, you can't like AEW? And why is it if you're an AEW fan, you can't like WWE? Who is like monitoring this? Who's making these rules? Who's making these rules for you in your life that if you like AEW, you cannot watch WWE? Like, I mean, is your mom coming in and controlling the remote control? I mean, what the hell is going on with that? That makes no sense to me.
I know. And what doesn't make sense is that if you make any little bit of comment whatsoever, like I watched AEW and everything, and I would make a comment and be like, wow, that was kind of dumb, that wasn't the smartest thing, then I would be called a mark, and I'm like, hey, I watch it, and like, well, if you make a comment like that, you don't. I'm like, so you can't criticize if something's bad?
No, you can't. You can't criticize because that would be wrong of you. I guess. I don't know. I mean, it's just like anything else. I mean, if you watch, say you watch the NFL. Say you have a team that you watch in the NFL. Some people actually watch NFL football. Mm-hmm. For me, I watch the NFL Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If Brady throws 2 interceptions in a game and I'm like, geez, Brady was off today, people don't come at me and go, oh my God, how could you say that about the greatest of all time, Brady? So why is it in WWE and AEW and we're not even mentioning Impact, we're not even mentioning what's the other one? What's the other one?
New Japan?
No. The other one.
Ring of Honor.
The one that's really good with Tyrus and Murdoch and NWA.
AWA Power. NWA Power.
Yeah,
which is a great show. Those guys are putting on a great show. Nobody even talks about those guys. But if you criticize anything right now, it's like you're shamed. People shame you for stating your opinion. You're not allowed to have an opinion different than everybody else's opinion, but everyone's opinion is different. So I don't understand how that makes sense. Watch it, enjoy it. Don't watch it. Turn the shit off. Go pick up a Bible. Go read the Bible if you want. Whatever. Do what you got to do. But, I mean, don't worry about what somebody else's opinion is of what you're watching. Hell, I watched Peacock and watched wrestling from 35 and 40 years ago. And I guarantee you, if I made that comment on a stream, somebody would blow up. Somebody's head would explode if I told them that,
They probably would.
That's the sad part. People, that would impact someone's life. Someone would read that comment and go to work tomorrow all upset, shaking their head like, how can that guy watch wrestling from 35 years ago? Doesn't he realize that stuff's already happened? That's really, seriously, that's like the world we're living in right now. I'm not a Tony Khan fan. I'm not an AEW fan. I have a hard time turning it on and watching the show. I have a hard time watching it because I don't enjoy it. You know, are there things that I like about it? Are there people on there that I like? Yeah, absolutely. But overall, could I sit and just watch hours and hours of AEW? No. But I could watch hours and hours of Peacock.
Yeah,
I'm with you on that. I'm not the hugest AEW guy, but I'm not going to sit there and knock it and say it's bad or whatever. I'm just support it because of wrestling.
Yep.
yeah.
I'm a wrestling fan. I like watching all kinds of wrestling. AEW, Ring of Honor, Impact, New Japan, WWE.
Yeah, it's just definitely like the world that we're in, especially you know the internet world community, the IWC is really where it's so
I like
toxic. It's so toxic. Like you can't say anything without anybody coming at you, and
Well, I mean,
that's kind of where we're at.
yeah, I mean, back in the
What?
day, Will said back in the day, Monday Night Wars was the best thing best thing on TV. You go home, you record one, you watch the other one. You know, when you got the spare time. I mean, that's all we're in now. But yeah, I enjoy wrestling. I watch it. You know,
If you weren't alive, Big B, you can verify this because you and I are very similar in age.
Yep.
If you were alive in 1996, 1997, 1998, and flipping back and forth between the two channels at every commercial break,
Yep.
then you weren't a wrestling fan because
Exactly.
that's what you did. Like you literally waited. Like they talk about, you know, sitting on the edge of your seat, stuff, right? Literally, you were on the edge of your seat or the edge of your couch, waiting for a commercial break to flip the channel to see what was happening on the other guys because you knew you were about to miss something good on one of them. You know, and that's literally how it was. It's not like that now. Even if both shows were on Monday night, it wouldn't be anything like that. I mean, there's nothing whatsoever that would make you go, well, I really need to see what's happening on the other channel. It's nothing like that. And one other point I'd like to make too, and I made this point earlier in the chat, and I know this is probably coming up later, but did you guys see Braun Strowman running out there and like trip over himself?
I missed it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll have to go look again.
All I could think was he can control his narrative, but he cannot control where his feet are. So
was that when he went after Gable and it looked like he missed him completely?
Well, yeah, and then he went after Otis to put him through the wall. Remember, he like stopped.
Yeah.
I mean, that was pretty. That was almost Titus O'Neil like.
Yeah.
You know, you guys remember when Titus O'Neil was running down the ramp and like slid under the ring?
Greatest Royal Rumble.
The Titus World Slide. The Titus World Slide.
That was awesome. That was so funny.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of Braun. I don't think he's a bad guy. I'm just not a fan of him. I think they could do a lot with him. The problem is they need to pair him up with somebody immediately because he's not really ever going to be a draw. You know, Andre the Giant was a humongous draw, but Andre the Giant was used very sparingly. He wasn't used all the time. He wasn't used every week. He wasn't on every Monday Night Raw or every Thursday Night SmackDown or Friday Night SmackDown or whatever. You know, they didn't even have those shows back then. But he wasn't used like that. He was used as a special attraction. And if you're going to make Braun Strowman a real special attraction, then that's what you need to do. Braun Strowman's never going to be Andre the Giant. He's never going to be the Big Show, you know. But you're going to have to put him with somebody like when he was with Bray, he did an amazing job as part of the Wyatt family.
Yep.
But after that, watching him win the WWE title or the Universal title, you know, it's so boring. You know, the guy, he's just not over. He's not over at all. And he's going to be back for about 3 or 4 weeks, and they're going to realize this guy's not over. And not only that, but what about EC3? What is he doing right now? Like sitting at home, looking at the walls, going, what the hell happened? Because I had a whole company of guys here, and then all of a sudden Triple H calls, and now I don't have a company anymore because there's nobody here with me. You know, I mean, you had Karrion Kross over there with Control Your Narrative. You had Adam Shearer, Braun Strowman over there. And all of a sudden, one phone call, and they were like, hey, we're boys till the end, but I got a call, so I got to roll out. I mean, so I kind of feel bad for EC3.
So Thomas Glenn is here, and Thomas Glenn is saying Andre was used around the
Oh
territory.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He was used very sparingly. He wasn't used all the time. Like you don't have a giant used all the time. That's the point. Is if you're going to have him as a special attraction, as a giant, which is, I mean, basically what he is, you're not going to use him all the time. And if you put him out there every single week, eventually the guy's going to end up losing to like Dominic Mysterio. And once that happens, you've destroyed that allure of the giant. That's the point.
No, I get you. All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll move on to our next topic, and we'll just kind of recap a little bit of Clash of the Castle. Now, this is a conversation that we were also having before we came on. And I know, Will, you had mentioned this a little bit last week before Clash of the Castle had taken place. But there's been a lot of debates on whether or not WWE made the right move by keeping the titles on Roman Reigns, and a lot of people are saying, yes, and then there's some of them that are saying, no, it wasn't the right move. If you personally ask me, I do believe it was the right move. In the end, it was the right move this time to keep the belts on Roman Reigns. And I know everyone's like, well, how can they not put it on Drew in his home territory? I get it, but I think in the end, I just feel like it was the right move. So, mess around. I'll start out with you. What do you think?
I like it. I love the way they kept it on him. I think it was a great call. They still make Drew look good, and they made him look strong by having Sequoia interfere and cost him a match and whatnot. So it is the right call for me. It's too early to take it off Reigns. Keep that bloodline going. Like I said before the show, like if they're gonna do the Rock Reigns thing, they got to take it off him before then, because then the match won't mean as much, because you know Reigns is gonna win that match because the Rock's not gonna stay around to defend the title.
All right, so Big B, it looked like you were kind of thinking about it. You're like, well, I don't know. So, what do you think? You think?
Yeah, it's tough. I guess I'm gonna probably give a lame answer. I think it was the right and the wrong move, because right now, I mean, the wrong move because Roman's beating everybody, and I mean now we got who can beat him? Karrion Kross, Breaker, Braun's back. I mean, who knows? But I mean, right now, I mean, Roman Reigns is the draw right now, and you guys know I've been behind the Tribal Chief gimmick for a while. Just give it time. But I mean, I'm kind of getting bored with it, but yet it is still a draw to me. And with Sequoia coming up now, they can get rid of Sami Zayn. So, we'll see what happens. But I'll go. It was the right and wrong move.
All right, so Joe is saying because everyone loses in their hometown, and then Roger Cooper is also saying original plan was Cody, which yeah, that was the original plan, was for Cody to take it off of Roman. He got hurt. Reigns wants a lighter schedule. He already has a lighter schedule. He already signed that new contract. Drew is over, but a repeat. So either cross Wyatt for long-term story or eventual Cody return, which I think is kind of what could happen. They might leave it on Roman until Cody returns, and then in the end, it could be Cody, unless they're waiting for that moment to where Bray Wyatt actually does return and make that surprise appearance for everybody, and he's showing that he's going after the title. But Will, I know you had some strong, words to say before Clash happened that you're like, God, I hope they don't put it on Drew. So there you go.
True. But the thing is, you got to split the belts. That's all there is to it. At the end of the day, you got to split the belts. You got to stop this, dual champion thing. The dual champion thing is almost as bad as an interim champion is in the other company. You got to get one of the belts. There's too many great guys underneath that need to be moved up. They need that title to help push them. I've been saying this for years, long before I ever did this. Ever since I first saw Karrion Kross work, you got to get him. You got to get a belt on that guy. He's going places. A great person in real life too to talk to. I've talked about that 1,000 times. You got to get him a belt. and you need to have Roman come out and just disrespect the WWE title and just say, you know what, this WWE title doesn't mean anything. I don't even need it. I'm the Universal Champion. That's all that matters. I'm going to surrender this belt. And that's how you take it off of them without taking it off of them. And then you have all these different guys that can compete for that WWE title. I mean, you got Cross, you got Cody coming back, you got McIntyre, you got Bobby Lashley, you got AJ Styles, you got Orton that's going to come back sometime soon. You got Riddle, you've got Seth, you got KO. Kev Buckler makes a great point. What about KO? There's a lot of guys who can do a lot with that WWE title, and you can make that WWE title so interesting that it wouldn't even matter when Roman is taking off different shows and different events for the Universal title, because the WWE title is so hot and so many things going on with it that's exactly what you need to do from a booking standpoint. And Triple H is extremely smart, and I think that's exactly what you're going to see happen. Bray comes back, Bray doesn't come back. At this point, you have enough heavy artillery to do what you need to do without Bray. Do I want to see him come back? Of course. But you have enough right now to do what you need to do.
Yeah, so I feel like the one thing that I'm saying with Kev, that he's saying why not Kevin Owens, I feel like right now that Triple H is really building up Seth and Kevin Owens. So I kind of feel like he's making them look big at the moment, because they are big guys. And so I feel like either one of them could potentially do it also. Seth Rollins, I think, would be a fantastic pick to take it off of Roman.
Sorry to interrupt you, but listen to this. When I saw Braun come back, I told you this earlier. I think you're the only one that answered me in the chat, but I immediately thought about that quote from the movie Tommy Boy, where David Spade's on the microphone on the airplane, and he's like, he's a big dumb animal, isn't he, folks? You know what I mean? As soon as I saw Braun come back, that's immediately what I thought. The guy, Braun can be something, I don't know what, but Braun's never going to be a draw to be the world champion. You have so much talent right now, you don't even need Bray Wyatt. That's how much talent they have. Bray Wyatt would just be an enhancement at this point.
So, yeah. The one thing I do want to say is, because speaking of Clash at the Castle, I think there's like one guy that we were really overlooking that I think is a very, very underrated guy that deserves a lot of credit because of that match he had at Clash of the Castle with Gunther. I believe that people are overlooking Sheamus. I mean, that dude puts on banger after banger after banger after banger. And I feel like Sheamus does not get enough credit, and people constantly overlook him. He's another guy that I'm like, dude.
And Triple H loves him too. So he's another one that could very easily go into a WWE Championship tournament and come out with the title. He's multiple-time world champion, and he's been going around. How long's he been there now? Got to be close to 20 years. I mean,
yeah, I think they said 15 years or something.
Yeah, I know it's a while. I mean, because he was WWE champion in 2009. He took it off of Cena, in a tables match. And so, I mean, that should tell you, he's been around a while, and he could definitely be up there. So there's a lot of great opportunities. The thing is, you don't want to make Roman look weak. You don't want to break his record. You don't want to break his streak. But you just have him come out there and say, you know what, I'm done with this belt. I'm keeping the only belt that matters. You guys can do whatever you want with this one. And I think that's how you reignite that flame and make it really exciting to watch WWE again, because so many people constantly going after that WWE title. You could be able to have a pay-per-view or two without the Universal Championship, and it wouldn't really matter.
And I can tell you that Sheamus and Gunther match lived up to the hype. That match was an absolute. That match was a banger. I was so glad that happened. But even in the end, when you look at that too, people are starting to see the talent that Gunther has. So, it's like you think about the Imperium versus the Bloodline. That would be like another one that you're like, oh my God, that would be crazy too, because Gunther is another one that you could potentially throw in there. So you have a ton of names you could throw in there. So last time I started with mess around. So Will, what was your thoughts on the Sheamus and Gunther?
You know, they're both tremendous athletes, both tremendous stars. I think they made the Intercontinental title mean something again in that match. Now they just need to find a way to get it back to, what it once was. It used to be the number two title. It used to be the working man's title. Like when you saw the Intercontinental champion, you kind of had it in the back of your mind that they were going to be the next world champion, and that's where they need to get it back to. And I think those two guys really worked hard to make it appear that way. So they've had some really bad champions, and I think they can definitely get it to where it needs to be. Like it used to be cool to watch a pay per view, and the main event was the main event, but you were kind of like, man, I really want to see that IC title match because that's what's going to be the match of the night. Those are your hardest workers. Those were always your really working guys. I mean, especially if you look back at like 90, 91, 92, where you knew Hogan was going to come out, throw some fists. He's going to kick somebody in the face. He's going to get beat up. He's going to do his whole Hulk up thing, and then he's going to drop a leg and it's going to be over. But when you had the Intercontinental title match, you knew that was going to be an actual match and it was going to be, a really enjoyable time. And that's what they need to get back to.
Yeah, and even Joe saying, Triple H is making the IC and US titles means something again. He is. That's the biggest thing. Is like with the title on Bobby Lashley, they're actually making it actually relevant. So, Big B, your thoughts on the Sheamus and Gunther match at Clash of the Castle?
Hey, Chief's comment. Let's make sure we get that in there. 2007 is when Sheamus signed with WWE.
Yeah.
2007. So thank you for that, Chief.
Yeah, Big B.
We can't hear you.
Sorry about that, guys. That match was definitely my top match of the night. I liked how it started with them just staring at each other while their little cronies fought, got ejected, thrown backstage, and then they had an all-out match. I mean, I hope we get to see a round 2 at Extreme Rules or another pay-per-view soon. So, but yeah, they made them both look good. I could have went either way if Sheamus would have won the title or if Gunther would have kept it. I was fine either way. That match was definitely the match of the night.
All right, you mess around.
I liked them. The match was really good. There was a couple spots that disappointed me. Like, I don't know if they were trying to make it seem like Gunther was tired or whatever. But when he went for the power bomb and he couldn't lift him all the way and it looked like he kind of blotched it. I'm not sure if they tried to make it look that way because he was tired or whatever, but that was kind of disappointing to me that it looked really weak. And then the ending with the lariat. I wasn't really happy with that. I thought that was kind of weak.
But sometimes that's how he wins his matches, though, is with a lariat, a strong lariat. So we'll only hit on like one more here before we go into the Will's historical part here.
How about Bailey? What about Bailey?
Yeah. Definitely. We'll talk about Bailey, and we can talk about that 6 women's tag match. So, Will, you want to kick us off there?
Well, I'm really more than anything. I want to talk about Bailey. Bailey coming back and having her return. I mean, hell of a match, and she looked really good moving out there, and I think she gets nearly as much credit as she deserves and she needs. Bailey and Bianca is kind of the feud that should have been a year or a year and a half ago that's going to finally happen, and I think those two are really going to be able to put on some great matches. I'm one of few that actually really like Bianca as well, but I think Bailey's pretty incredible, and I think she's going to do very well. You know what I think makes Bailey so good in the ring is she was such a fan growing up that she does a lot of her movements and a lot of her actions that kind of mimic the older stars. Like if you look at some stuff, especially her punches, like if you could literally watch her throw a punch and then go watch a tape from like 1992 and watch the Macho Man throw a punch, and it's the exact same punch. You know, I mean, that to me, that's the highlight of talking about that match. And of course, you know, we were doing the predictions on who was going to win and all that stuff. And, you know, I really saw that coming. I think a lot of people were against, you know, Bailey winning and didn't think that would happen. But she did a hell of a good job. And she definitely, after having so much time off, she really didn't have any ring rust. She looked really good. So that was kind of my take on that.
All right, so Thomas Burnett is saying the lariat out of nowhere was a good finish, and it is. And sometimes the lariats that just come from nowhere, they're great finishes. And then you also have Joe who's saying I'm becoming a WWE fan again, and because the writing and everything has gotten much better. So it's definitely been a lot more entertaining. And then Thomas is saying Bailey versus Bianca at Extreme Rules. Oh yeah, absolutely. I think you're going to see that happen. And actually, to be honest, I think you're going to see Bailey win it. I think you're going to end up seeing her take the title off of Bianca. And Roger's saying she's definitely a great heel and was going to be mad if they had built up that match just to screw Bailey's team. Yeah, I kind of figured that Bailey's team was going to win that.
Can I ask a totally unrelated question that's been bothering me? I think we talked about it in the chat. Why the hell is Toni Storm not over? I know it's an AEW, but why the hell is she not over? Like, I could literally picture Toni Storm in that match that Bailey and Bianca and them just had. Like, why is she not over? Like, she should be such a big deal right now.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It kind of comes down to like the thing too. And look, I'm not saying that, you know, so I'm just bringing up Liv for just a second here. But I'm saying, look, this is where the whole thing gets me. Because, you know, at the very beginning, Liv was like so over. You know, everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, I want Liv to win the title." She wins the title, and then all of a sudden everybody turns against her. And I get, you know, it could have dealt with that whole with the way that the match ended with Ronda Rousey. I get it. But they kind of made up for it with Shayna, and people are still against her. You know, people are saying, how can you realistically have Liv beat Shayna? And I get it. So, you know, Will, I'm just saying I'm with you on the Tony thing, but then you got to look at the Liv side too and be like, okay, it kind of goes hand in hand here of why did people just turn against her? Just like that.
Realistically, how could you have Hulk Hogan beat Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3? I mean,
right?
Because it's professional wrestling. I mean, in real life, I'm pretty sure if Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant faced off, Andre would have squashed Hogan in real life. So it's professional wrestling. If you want to watch realistic, then go watch MMA or go watch UFC or whatever. You know, it's an adult, you know, story and there's different things going on. But, you know, I think people get too much into this whole fake, not fake, real, not real. You know, in reality, I mean, they're still getting slammed. They still get thrown around. They still get hurt. You know, most wrestlers have more injuries than any other professional sport in the entire world. Most football players have less injuries than any professional wrestler. And, I mean, what other contact sport is there that's tougher than football? So,
Hockey.
You know, well, I mean, in hockey, yeah, you might get your teeth knocked out, you might get your face busted open for some fights, but you're probably not going to go home with a broken neck, most likely.
Right.
I mean, I guess you could slip on the ice and break your neck, but realistically, you're probably not going to break your neck. But you know, look at Big E. I just had this conversation. I can't remember when it was. It was recently. I had this conversation about Big E. Big E gets thrown in that suplex and lands on his head. A normal man that wasn't worked out and as muscular and built as Big E landed on his head like that, he would have died. Right then and there, no questions asked. His neck would have snapped. It would have killed him. You know? So these are the types of athletes we have, and people put too much into the realistic versus a not realistic. Liv Morgan could never realistically beat Shayna Baszler. How do you know that? Because in the locker room, maybe Liv Morgan is like the baddest thing going around, and Liv Morgan is like from the streets, and she'll tear you up. Who knows?
Right.
I don't know. She obviously came from a very tough, upbringing. So, just because Shayna was in the UFC doesn't mean that Shayna can ultimately beat every woman known to man. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and
I
so
think, I think they put too much into that. Is my point.
so I'm saying, what do you think they're doing with Theory and the Money in the Bank briefcase? I think eventually, but Big B, you were asking about this the other day, but the thing is, WWE does this all the time, though. They do it every year. When somebody wins a Money in the Bank briefcase, they make them look weak for a while. They have them go on a losing streak, and then eventually they cash it in out of nowhere. They did that same thing with Seth Rollins. When he won his, he lost match after match after match after match, and then eventually he cashed it in. So I think eventually it will happen. I think eventually he will cash it in. I just don't know when, but it will happen.
So Thomas Glenn, the chief, we need to make sure we cover that comment. There's a lot of good comments, but I want to make sure I cover this. He says, "What do you call over, gentlemen? It's all about putting butts in the seats." As Dusty Rhodes said in his Hall of Fame speech, if it wasn't for the fans, his car, his home, his children's schooling was all paid for by the fans. So, in his opinion, it's the fans that puts the wrestlers over. I agree with that 100%. And the fans did put Liv Morgan over, and I think the fans have put Toni Storm over in AEW, but she's just not over. And
Yeah.
there needs to be a way to get her over. I hate to go back to this, but I really supported Thunder Rosa and thought really, really highly of her. And look how she turned out. She wouldn't even work with her the people she worked with. So I don't know. But
it's like if you go back to even as far as Kofi Mania, if it wasn't for the fans, Kofi never would have got a title.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you think about that too. That's a great point, Dave. Great point. So think about Kofi Mania. Unless I'm wrong, unless something's happened along the way, Kofi Kingston was the first ever black WWE champion. And literally, I see Big B trying to think it out, but there was black world heavyweight champions. But WWE champion Kofi Kingston was the first black WWE champion. And a lot of that came from a comment that happened back in like 1982, where supposedly Vince Sr. told Vince Jr. that never ever put belt on a black champion because they won't draw the crowds. But I'll tell you what, you fast forward to WrestleMania 35. Hell, I don't think there was anybody in the world that didn't want to see Kofi Kingston win that WWE title.
Right.
Now the way they took it off of him was absolutely horrible book. That should have never happened. That should have been a hell of a good match. They should have had Kofi give it his all, and then Lesnar give him the F5 6 or 7 times and make it look like he killed him. But regardless, him running and picking him up and F5 at him and winning in like 4 seconds, that was so stupid. But there's so many different things that you try to make sense out of it, and maybe that's the biggest issue. Maybe we're all trying to make some sort of sense out of stuff that maybe it's not meant to make sense. I don't know. Maybe somewhere Doink the Clown is writing some storylines. I don't know.
Right. So we have a few comments here to where Joe is saying Theory will not become champion even if he cashes it in, and Thomas Burnett saying I also agree 100% with Chief. Thomas Glenn is saying maybe Tony beating DMD gets her over, and then Joe is saying how about Booker T? How about The Rock? And then Thomas.
No, because Booker T was world heavyweight champion, not WWE champion. Booker T was never WWE champion. I'm talking about the WWE championship, which used to be the WWF championship. I'm not talking about the big gold. Everybody
No.
had the big gold.
Mhm.
I'm
Ron
not,
Simmons had the big gold, I think.
but no, Ron Simmons had the WCW championship in '92.
Okay.
That wasn't the big gold, but
Okay,
that was in
gotcha.
WCW. I'm talking about WWF though. The
Yeah.
actual WWF that became the WWE title. There was never ever an African American champion until Kofi Kingston, and that was in what 2019. You know, so that was the point I was trying to make.
All right. Well, going on to our next thing here, because you had mentioned it, you mentioned the WCW title, so now we can transition into that, and we can talk about. All right, Will, you can your historical thing here that we were talking about is the debut of Nitro, WCW Monday Night Nitro, taking place at Mall of America.
Yep. So if you haven't watched it in, I don't know, 27, 28 years, 27 years, go back and watch it. Let me tell you, the quality of the show that they put on, even though the arena sucked because it was the Mall of America, like that was probably a pretty stupid idea. But overall, the matches and the quality and all that were really good. So, you got Jushin Liger, you got Brian Pillman. They do an opening match, which is their cruiserweights back then. I was never a fan of the cruiserweights back then. It took a while for me to grow into the whole cruiserweight thing, but it was a hell of a match. And then all of a sudden, you have Ric Flair and Sting in a match free for the world on the first ever Monday Nitro. Incredible match, Flair and Sting. I mean, you can't have a bad Flair and Sting match. And then the main event, I think a lot of people even back then thought, of course you didn't have the internet like you do now, but I think a lot of people back then thought, not such a great main event, but it really was. You had Hulk Hogan and the Big Boss Man, who was going by Big Bubba Rogers, is what he was going by as the bad guy, But it was still the Big Boss Man versus Hulk Hogan. Of course, you had, the first appearance of Lex Luger in WCW. Lex comes out in the middle of the Flair Sting match. Then at the end of it, you got Lex Luger comes out at the end of the Hogan match because, Hogan beats the Big Boss Man in the ring. Here comes the Faces of Fear. They're coming down. It's the Zodiac, the Shark, Kevin Sullivan, and they're beating up Hogan. Well, then, of course, here comes Sting. Here comes the Macho Man. And then here comes Lex Luger because it was all set up Fall Brawl in 1995, Fall Brawl War Games. But that whole first episode, you literally could go back and watch that show and go, wow, this is something really different. This is something they're doing. And I know we're talking about the first show, but then you kind of transition into the second show, and it's in an arena. And I'll tell you what, I think the second show is just as good or better. You could really tell that they came to play. You got some big names there. You got some tremendous stuff going on, and true competition at the time for the WWF. Now, WWF in September 1995, you had Diesel as your champion. You just lost Lex Luger. You got Bret Hart running around somewhere in the mid card. You got Shawn running around in a Continental Championship. So you had some things going on over there, but you didn't have a lot of really big, really good storylines because I think Diesel's last opponent was Mabel at SummerSlam '95, and then the next match coming up was Diesel and Shawn versus Yoko and Owen for the tag titles at the pay-per-view. So you didn't have a big main event coming up. I mean, it was cool, but it wasn't like a big deal like you would see later on in WWF. But you had some really cool stuff going on in WCW. The idea of the War Games, the War Games team of Hogan, Savage, Sting, and Luger, that team right there alone, listen to those names. I mean, those guys are all multi-time world champions. So there's some tremendous stuff going on there. So really, really cool. If you haven't watched it in the past 27 years, go back and watch it. We just had the anniversary a couple days ago. Big D was talking about, I think it was September the 4th, 1995.
Yep.
Tremendous. Watch it, turn it on, check it out. Very cool.
So we have Thomas Glenn who's saying the Nitro Girls. And then Thomas is saying having it at Mall of America was something different. Thomas Burnett is also saying Luger showing up was the first the first shot to start the war. Roger saying Bubba Rogers was one of the best agile big men. And then Thomas is saying Luger replaced Vader in War Games as Vader got himself suspended. All right,
Yeah.
so
Vader never came back. That was it. Vader ended up leaving, and 3 months later, Vader was in the Royal Rumble in WWF. So great points. One of the things that they said, having it at the Mall of America was something different. Yeah, it was something different, but it's something they should never have done again, because I just didn't enjoy that part of it. But I guess at the time it was pretty cool, but I didn't think very much of it. Everybody says Luger showing up was the first shot of the Monday Night Wars, and it probably was. But I really think the first shot, or maybe we'll call it the pre-shot. Maybe we'll call Luger showing up on the first Nitro. We'll call that the money shot. But the pre-shot, if you guys can kind of catch where I'm going with this, was. Are you guys following me with this or not? Because Big B is laughing, so he knows what I'm saying. But I don't know if you guys are catching me or not. The pre-shot was Macho Man showing up in early December, late November of '94 before Starrcade. That was really the first shot that was fired. So I would say Macho showing up was like the pre-shot, and Lex showing up the Mall of America was the money shot.
Because the Savage showing up was kind of, I mean, they both are shocking, but Vince just gave a little tribute to Savage. Hope you're doing okay, or stuff like that. Wish you the best. Hope you come back home or something. And then
Yeah, that was on a Monday Night Raw,
Yeah.
and Macho just randomly shows up on a Saturday night main event, Saturday night main event, 6:05 on TBS. Saturday night main event comes out, and he's like, "Hey, you guys got a guy named Hulk Hogan that works here, and I'm gonna see him at Starrcade, and I'm either gonna shake his hand or I'm gonna slap his face." So that was really the first shot. I mean, I know everybody says the Lex thing was, but if you think about it, Macho jumping ship when no one expected that, and you got to remember too, we didn't have
Hogan.
we didn't have these in our hands 24/7 back then. Like we didn't have the whole world at our fingertips. We didn't have iPads and computers and stuff where we could sit here and do this, right? So when Macho Man pops up and shows up, and he's going to either shake the hand of Hogan or slap his face, as a wrestling fan, I mean, I think I was like 12 years old. I was like, holy shit, this is incredible, And for me, I think that was the first shot.
Yeah.
So, mess around. I'm going to ask you, when did you first start? Did you watch WCW from day one?
When did I first start? Probably right at the kickoff of the Goldberg run when he first went out to run the undefeated streak and all that, and he was a big thing there. And then when Hall and Nash came over to the start of the NWO.
So that's 2 different years, because Hall and Nash came over in May, June of '96, and the whole Goldberg thing didn't start until September of '97. So it sounds like you started about the summer of '96, and then kind of walked through, is what it sounds like, which is a great time. But what we're talking about is like 2 years before that, maybe 18 months before that, where you just didn't know what the hell was going to happen. But what a great time to be a fan and watch this stuff. Big B, I know you're about my age. We're about the same age. I know you remember this stuff, man.
Oh.
Watching Scott Hall walk through the crowd, and you're like, what is Razor Ramon doing on Monday Nitro? Like,
well, exactly. And like,
as a young man, you're like this was life-changing. You were like, I need to call someone right now because Razor Ramon is on Nitro. This makes no sense.
So, So So Thomas is saying Savage didn't re-sign with the WWE, the WWF, which was well known as Vince wished him in his future endeavors, while Luger was working under a gentleman agreement. And then Joe is saying been watching NWA, WCW since 1987. And then Thomas Burnett, I started watching WCW in the summer of '91. Joe seen the first Nitro and Raw, and then Roger Cooper saying summer of '93 was when he first started watching WCW.
So in 1994, correct me if I'm wrong, and normally I don't dispute stuff like this, but correct me if I'm wrong. Savage didn't sign this contract in '94, and it was well known. Well known by who?
You're like, what?
Well known by who? Who
Well,
knew that?
like you said, Will, I mean, we didn't have the internet and stuff like that back then. And,
Right.
I'm with you. When I saw, I mean, even when Hogan signed with WCW, they made a big deal about it. And I'm just like, what? Hogan, WWF? Hogan's going to WCW?
I mean,
And,
even in '94, you didn't even have the hotlines yet.
yeah.
So well known by who? Who put that information out there? Who told everybody but didn't tell me? Because
Yeah.
I didn't know it until Vince came on Raw one night for like 30 seconds and said, good luck, Macho Man. Thanks for all your contributions, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, was there like somebody, I don't know, maybe he knows something that I didn't know. I'm pretty sure he and I are about the same age too.
Yeah.
So, we
Well,
were
yeah.
both 12 years old.
And Thomas is saying that Vince went on TV and wished him his future.
Well, exactly. Yeah. He said that. I mean,
On Monday Night
and then
Raw.
to have
like,
him pop
second.
up on WCW was.
But nobody knew he was going to be on WCW the next Saturday night on Saturday night's TBS. That's what I'm saying, though. It wasn't well known. It wasn't just because Vince come on there and said bye to you doesn't mean you're going to WCW. Doesn't say anything about WCW.
Yeah, which Thomas is saying that's how we knew that Savage was gone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we knew he was gone, but we didn't know he was going to WCW. That I think maybe we got some sort of misconnect here. I'm not saying that I'm just saying that you didn't know back then. Shit just happened, and you were surprised, and it was really cool because it just randomly happened.
No, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I just think there is some miscommunication somewhere where they're confused.
Maybe the WWF called Thomas Burnett and was like, hey, man, hey, man, just so you know, Macho is going to join WCW next week. I'm just teasing Thomas. We call Thomas our wrestling historian for a reason because he knows a lot of this stuff.
Yep.
He debates a lot of this stuff with me because he's super intelligent.
Right.
But I don't think it was well known. That was my point.
All right. So we're at that point anyways. It's time to say our goodbyes, do our final recap here. Mess around, Dave. I'll start with you. Your final recap.
Great show. I'm glad. I'm kind of disappointed we didn't talk about Dominic's turn. That was like the highlight for me at Clash, but always great to be on the show. Hopefully I'll be on more often.
All right, Big B.
Yeah, no, sorry, had a little family thing going on, but that's why I joined late. But always good to come on and chat with Will when I can, and Ace, and that's all. Sorry, Joe couldn't be here, but yeah, we're definitely got to take some time and talk about the Dominic turn that finally happened. I wish it would have went a different way, but hey, it is what it is. And just keep checking us out.
All right, Will.
It's surreal because I literally can remember these things, and we've talked about it so much, and I hate to say it again, but I can remember being a little boy and going in the video store and renting the videotapes, and I can remember being a little boy and going to the mailbox and checking the mailbox every day until the monthly magazine came. And that's how you kept up with wrestling, and you watched the weekly shows. And, if you missed something on the weekly show, there was no on demand. There was none of that stuff. You couldn't go back and just rewatch it. A lot of the stuff you saw, you had to remember. You had to just remember it because there was no way. You could VCR tape it, but there was no way to go back and check it out. There wasn't a bunch of replays and stuff like that. And being able to go back and look in time and talk about this stuff, I really think couple things. I really think we need to, number one, we've got to get some more people on here that can help share some of these videos, because it seems like every time we talk with people, they bring up different things, and it sparks a different memory for some of us, and that's really, really cool. So we've got to get some more people on here talking and get into some of the stuff. And I really think we need to have a night where we focus just on history, like wrestling history, some different historical moments, and kind of leave the present stuff out for a little while and focus on some historical stuff, because, man, some of the nostalgia coming back on some of the stuff is just absolutely phenomenal. So, humongous shout out to all my guys over on Top Rope Collectibles, admin team, all the guys that spend time hanging out with us in our sales, all the guys that come over here and check us out. Huge shout out to Thoughts Count Anywhere, Chief of Mania, Running Wild, Thomas Glenn, Aaron Phillips, all those great people. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for watching us, hanging out, mess around. Thanks for coming and hanging out. Really appreciate it. Big B, man, it is always a hell of a good time talking some old school stuff because I know that you know what it was like looking at that little like 13-inch television screen and seeing all this cool stuff happen. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, you know, it's a good thing we have the network or Peacock or whatever. But, you know, it's unfortunate because today's fans will never really know what that was like. Of course, thanks to Ace of Mania. Great job as always. Huge shout out in the back to Crispy Bacon. I know he's back there hanging out and doing all the technical stuff. So we miss you, Joe. Hope you come back next week. And Joe's another one, too, man. Me and Joe, we can talk back and forth like crazy because we watched a lot of the stuff, you know, at the same time. And he's another historian, too. And, you know, but thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. And we'll see y'all very soon.
All right. Yep. We want to thank everybody for watching. It's been another fun episode. You'll be able to catch us again next Tuesday night for another episode of Tuesday Night Mania. With that, everybody has a fantastic night, and we will see you all next week. Have a good